The purpose of this video is to show how to produce a large-scale application in GTK in Windows 10. What you're looking at is a Windows 10 desktop, and you're looking at a GTK application running native in it. The application was compiled with Microsoft Visual C++. It doesn't use Cygwin, doesn't use MSys, it doesn't use an X-Window emulator. It's just plain old Windows. And it is GTK, which is providing the graphics. And you can see many of the features that people would normally use: spinners, sliders, panels, graphics, the whole 9 yards are in here. So this is the target. This is where I want to go. Question is, how do we get here? So I'll cut that back. Well, first of all, you're going to need software. And this, by the way, is in the README file for the download. Okay, all of this information. And I am running in the background here a virtual copy of Linux Mint Mate 20.0, Juliana or something, I think it's called. And you'll be wise to have it, because one of the problems is that the Glade that's used to manage the layout on the screen, there is no version that runs native in Windows. You're going to have some kind of a Linux system that'll work. There is a version, but it's ancient. It won't work. So you're going to need some kind of a Linux system, and one of the easiest ways is just to run it virtual. I will explain that later, but not right now. Anyway, that actually takes me down to the Windows desktop. And down in the Windows desktop, I'm actually in Linux right now. It's running on top of Windows, but it's Linux. There is the actual code. And down here there will be, and this distribution is available, obviously, there's a readme.txt. I'll open up a terminal window. Well, actually, I think I already had one open. Let me go down here. Yeah, there is a terminal window, and it discusses all the code that you need, and that's what I'm going to just go over here. Okay, first of all, on your Windows system, don't install WSL2. It has a tendency to break VirtualBox. Well, VirtualBox is the Oracle product that allows you to run Linux and other operating systems virtually. It's one of them out there. There's several, but I use VirtualBox. I think it's been fixed. But when I started doing this, I had to back off of WSL2. That's a Microsoft product. To get back to WSL1, it was a nightmare. I don't know if it's been fixed. You don't need WSL2. It's nice to have WSL1, but you don't actually need it either. But if you haven't installed WSL2, don't. Not at the moment, anyway. The other business is several other things, which we'll talk about the resource files some other time. Okay, what you're going to need is Microsoft Visual C++ Visual Studio. Actually, you don't need the Studio, but Community Edition. When you get that, and here comes Chrome back up, which is actually running in Windows. You can search for Visual Studio, and you get this page from Microsoft, and you go to this page here, and it turns out that's it here, the download. So it's visualstudio.microsoft.com/downloads. It's easier to remember. I assume you're going to get the free version. You could buy the expensive one if you want, but go for it. When it downloads an executable, when you run the executable, there will be some options, and that's where I was right here. The options, when you see them, check off Linux Dev C++ and check off desktop boxes. Okay, there will be some options during the install process. Check those two boxes. All right, so that's Microsoft Visual C++, and check the Linux Dev C++ and desktop dev boxes. You can redo it if you make a mistake. It's not going to harm anything. Next thing is you need the Windows 10 SDK, and that's it there. As it turns out, I can cut and paste between the operating systems. I don't know if I've got it up here or not. But I will in a second. Whoops. So this is the SDK. It comes from Windows. Download it and install it. Okay. You'll need some of that, depending on what you're going to do. But the SDK. So get the SDK. Now I'll go back over here. Next of all, you're going to need VCPKG. This is, again, it's a Microsoft product. And I've got it all already here. It's on GitHub, and it's github.com, Microsoft VCPKG. And it gives you the instructions here. I'm not going to do it. You can do it yourself. But it tells you basically you're going to download an installer, and the installer is going to go from there. And what it does is it downloads packages that include many of the functionality that is in Linux, but it's been compiled with Microsoft Visual C++. And it's actually a Microsoft product. It's a port by Microsoft of a lot of Linux tools. And they're there. And in my case here, they are on my, I'll show you what it looks like. There's VCPKG. It'll show up as a directory. And in VCPKG, it's, by the way, huge. As I'll talk about that later. This is, as things go, it's pretty big. It's up around 6 gigabytes or something of everything. And I didn't download everything. So there's a lot of stuff there. Yeah, it's 6.91 gigabytes on disk. All right. What's down here is a lot of packages of things. Here we go into packages, and you see them all, like Cairo, which is a drawing package. But it's here both in the 32-bit and the 64-bit. Apparently, Microsoft is clinging to the wish that 32-bit computers are coming back in no time. But get the 64-bit version. And down here, it contains DLLs, and it contains libraries, for example. It also includes include files. I don't have the source code here. The source code's available, but source code's someplace else, as a matter of fact. But it's in the same directory. But you need the include files in order to access the libraries. But anyway, it's just piles and piles of features that came from Linux that have been recompiled into Windows, and it's VCPKG. And we'll get as to what you need later, but there are instructions, and you can, I'm not going to get into the instructions, but these are instructions by Microsoft, and they should be doable. All right, next thing. Now I flipped back over to Linux Mint. All right, the code, that program I showed you uses VLC libraries in order to manage media files. That's video LAN, and the video LAN files are here. And they come down as a package which has the new PKG file extension. That's just really a zip file, and you can change it to zip, and you can download. Anyway, it's already up here. It's NuGet.org packages, blah, blah, blah. And it's over here. It's not the main side of the page. It's over on the right side of the page. And that's the package that you need to get all the VLC libraries. All right, next thing, VLC libraries. In the end, I'm going to show you how to get around this real easy, but these are all the details. FFmpeg. I use FFmpeg in order to extract metadata from media files. And the FFmpeg, just bring this up, there it is here, FFmpeg. If you mouse over the Windows logo, I got it from BTBN, okay? BTBN will get you the files you need and unpack them and so forth and so on. And we'll get into the question of where. The next one you need is going to be, that's FFmpeg, is FFTW, Fast Fourier Transform. And it's, as you can see, it's fastfouriertransform.org, and it's up here. Install windows.html and get the 64-bit version of it. It's got the files necessary to do the frequency analysis for that spectrum from the audio. If you're not using any audio spectrums, of course, you don't need this. And likewise, if you're not doing any media files, you don't need FFmpeg, and you don't need video LAN. But since since the application is using all those things, I need it. All right, so basically, get the C compiler, okay. Get the SDK, the Windows SDK, wherever it went. Get the VCPKG. You're going to need that for any application. The other things here, the video LAN, the FFmpeg, and the Fast Fourier Transform. If you're not using those, you don't get them. The other problem is going to be running Glade. As I said before, the version of Glade that's available to run native in Windows doesn't work. It's ancient. You can't use it with anything modern. Certainly not with the Glade I'm using. So you need some way of doing it, and that means Linux. Well, the easiest way to get Linux is go to VirtualBox. It's a product by Oracle, and it's free. and this is the page. Just search for Oracle VirtualBox or VBox even, and it will come up. So if you click Windows Host, it'll give you the download link where you can click it and install it, and that gives you the basic VirtualBox. Okay. You also need the extensions. The extensions give you extra features that you're going to need. Okay. Once you've installed the VirtualBox on your Windows machine, then get the extensions. Follow the instructions. It's not too difficult, but once you install the VirtualBox, it will install the extensions. It may do it automatically, but if it doesn't do it automatically, here is the link to it. And the extensions are regardless of what platform you're on, but of course for Windows, OS X, and for Linux, and also Solaris, if Solaris is still out there. All right, so that's the VirtualBox. Once you get a VirtualBox, you need an operating system. And the one I'm using is Linux Mint 20, and I'm using the Mate version. Okay, this Cinnamon and this XFCE. I recommend Mate. Everything I'm doing is going to use the Mate interface, so if you want to be the same, get Mate. I think it's better. I've modified the Mate a bit too. This is it running in the background. This menu over here on the left-hand bottom side, that is, I took the original one off, which is a Cinnamon type menu, and I replaced it with the traditional GNOME 2.0 or whatever, 2.3, whatever it was, the last update to the old GNOME system, which has pop-ups for system, pop-ups for places, pop-ups for all sorts of stuff. All right, once you've gotten Linux installed in VirtualBox, and I'm going back to full screen, which is, it's right Control F takes me to full screen, because you noticed up here something popped up, and what you need to do is install something into the Linux system. Go to Devices and go to Insert Guest Additions. I've already done it. You can see over here it says VBox GIS. That's Guest Additions. So when you click this, it's as though you have inserted a CD into the computer. And up will pop after a few moments. It's not instant. After a few moments, it will pop up a box asking you if you want to run the auto prompt. Say yes. And what it will do is it'll run the software on this Guest Additions. And what it does is it goes in and modifies the Linux kernel so that the Linux kernel will interact with the virtual software, with the virtual host. By interacting with the virtual host, it makes it possible for the Linux system to do certain things that otherwise wouldn't be able. One of which is to get into the Windows 10 file system. And that's what this is over here, SF Desktop. That actually brings me up the Windows 10 desktop, this is what's in it from. So you got to have the Guest Additions running before you can do that. Once you get the Guest Additions installed and so forth and so on, you will also need, okay, you install VirtualBox. You install Linux Mint into VirtualBox. You'll have to do the updates too. There'll probably be a couple 100 million bytes of updates that have to get done. Do the updates first. There'll probably be kernel updates and so forth. Get all the updates done. Then install the VBox Guest Additions. Okay, under Devices. This thing may be I think this thing normally will be at the bottom. It's at the top of mine. I don't like it at the bottom, but you can switch it in the Oracle control box and insert Guest Additions CD. It'll do it. It'll behave as though you just inserted a CD. Run the auto prompt. It'll take a while to run, then reboot, and that'll turn all sorts of things on that make everything nice. All right. Once you've done all that, you want to go down to System. You want to go to Administration. You want to go to Users and Groups. You want to go to Manage Groups. You want to go all the way down to the bottom, and you want to click on VBox SF, and you want to go to Properties, and you want to add yourself. Your name will be here, whatever your name is in Linux. Check the box, and it'll ask you for a password and so forth, which will be your system password. That enables you to participate in the group, which is VBox SF, which is shared files. So unless you do that, you can't share files back and forth between the host operating system and the guest operating system. This is the guest. Once you do that, of course, you can do stuff like this. And there's some other things you can do as well that way. So get Oracle, install Linux, do the updates, do the guest additions, add yourself to the VBUX SF group. And that's why I recommend using Mate, because it'll be very difficult to find the users and groups in most of the other versions. Anyway, once you've done all that, you're ready to go, more or less. Now I'm going to minimize the Linux up there, and I'm going to get rid of this. When you installed Microsoft Visual C++, okay, something appeared down here in your Start menu, and it'll be down here. You'll see it, Visual Studio 2019. Click on it, and you'll see down here there's an x64 Native Tools command prompt. All right, there's others. For some, again, they're anticipating Windows 32 is coming back in no time, but get the 64 version. Okay, it's also up here because I've moved it up to the whatever they call that panel. I've also moved it out here. So this here is this here is this here. Oh, not the crossbrim, this one up here. So I've got it on the desktop. What that is a command prompt, but it's a command prompt in which the environment variables have been set up correctly to use the Visual C++ compiler. If you use a regular command prompt, it ain't going to work because you don't have the linkages to the correct libraries and so forth. If you type path, you can actually see in here, there's all sorts of things, Visual Studio, blah, 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 all sorts of connects, linkages to the various libraries that are needed in order to compile and link a C++ program. Microsoft has already done this for you. You could type it in yourself, but I don't recommend it. So that's why you want to use that command prompt. Now it came up in, I've fixed mine, so it comes up in desktop. I altered the link here so it comes up in start in, okay? So I had it start in this GTK directory. I put my stuff down in the GTK directory. And if I do a CD down to player, that's what's down there. Here's the GTK directory. It's on the desktop. There's a bunch of stuff down here, previous copies, some other code. There's player, all right? And player is where all the code is that we're going to be using, or I'm using. You may use something else. And if I type compile, you can see there's a compile.bat over here. Let me get this out of the way. Compile.bat, where is it? Someplace there it is there. If I just type compile, it runs the compiler. It's very verbose. And then it runs the linkage editor, and it just created a new copy of the player. The copy it created was player.exe. Don't run player.exe because it won't work. I'll just type it in here and you'll see. See? Doesn't work because it doesn't. Now it's going to give me a bunch of complaints because it can't find a whole bunch of libraries. Okay, these are the libraries, you know, for the video LAN and for FFmpeg and what all. The problem is I have a separate file here, sgr.bat. I'll open it with an editor, and it's got the libraries built in. All right, we'll discuss the libraries in a moment. So if you run sgr.bat, or just sgr, it comes up, bingo, and it throws messages into the background there. All right, so that's that. Yeah, this glib gsettings thing, I haven't figured out how to fix that yet. There's some weird things that still happen. It doesn't affect the performance, however. I also made a launcher down here, and if I look at the launcher, you'll see the launcher has been set up. The target is actually sgr.bat, and the background, I actually set a background color. It has to be in it's hexadecimal, pound sign, two digits for red, red, green, blue, and each are 2 digits from 0 to F. They have to be exactly that, and in other words, don't give 5 digits. You could also put specific colors if they're recognized, like red. All right, and it tells it where to start. Starts in player, and it tells it to start minimized, which means the window that's starting will minimize, but the thing that it's starting won't. So if I click here, you see the thing will come up. Okay, and there is actually technically another window down here. I don't know how to get rid of it. Again, I'm not really a Windows person. But nonetheless, okay, so that's, if you get all that software, and you get my distribution, you can compile it and run it, or you can get it, edit it, and compile it and run it. All right, there's more to come. This is the messy episode. Where do you get my software? Well, you go to my website, which is cs.uni.edu/squiggle-o'kane, or squiggle I think is normally pronounced as tilde. It's the uppercase back quote on a US keyboard. Squiggle O'Kane, and it will bring you up here. You go to Pocket Radio, and you go down here, and there's an older version of the Linux version of this program, and here is the zip file for the Windows program. All right, so you get that. And everything in its GPL2 or MIT license. I think the MIT license was slapped on some GPL2. MIT is completely wide open. GPL2 has restrictions, but they're both open source. And there's also a version of the metering software for Windows. All right, so get that. Once you get it, you decompress it, and that's what this player directory is. It's what you get when you decompress it. And yes, there will be a .exe file in there if you want to run it. Or if you want to compile, you'll probably have to allow it and go in there and change the protections on this thing, right-click and go down to properties, something or other, go to security, and make it executable. I don't know exactly what happens when it's run on other people's machines, and that may be true for the bat file. I don't know what player.bat is. Where did that come from? It looks like it's debris. Oh, I see what it is. Never mind. No, it doesn't run here. That's to be used on a Linux system. It came across from the Linux system and ended up with the .bat name, although it won't run in Windows. I should probably delete it because it's not needed. There we go. All right. So now you've got this. The problem is all that software I mentioned that you needed to install, you don't need to install it. You do need the Linux because you're still going to run Glade. Somehow you're going to need to run Glade. And Glade isn't going to run on Windows. That's not my fault. But all the other stuff, all that VCPKG, all of that stuff, you don't need it. It's already here. See this subdirectory? Now, if you don't trust me, go and download it yourself. Okay, but here it is. Here's the VCPKG. Now, my version of it, you'll notice, is only 254 megabytes. So obviously, I got rid of some stuff. I got rid of the stuff I didn't need. This isn't a 32-bit application, so almost everything that said x86 went away. So down here, I got rid of a lot of the source code, a lot of packages that I simply wasn't using. See, it's a smaller number of packages. There's only one x86 here. I don't think there's another one. And I'm not even sure if I'm still using that one. But anyway, so we go down to Cairo, which is the graphics. So it's just the DLLs and the libs got the, whoops, wrong one. Got the bin files in it, or the lib files, excuse me. And so these are this is all you need, these packages. So under the directory called library, there's VCPKG. Under the directory called FFTW, there are the fast Fourier transform libraries, okay? And there are FFmpeg. There's only one program here. This XFprobe is the same as the other one. It's an older version. But ffprobe.exe is the one that looks up metadata on a file. It's a pretty standard program. There's Pixbuff. I'm not sure I'm actually still using that or not. I've had problems with Pixbuffs. There's the Videoland software. It's under builds. It's under x64. It's under plugins. There's all sorts of things down here. I don't even remember what half of them are, but it's all the DLL. It's all the software that you need to run to use the Videoland APIs. All right. And I don't know what targets is, but I guess it's how they compiled it or something like that. All right, so let me get to the top here. So in library, all this stuff is already here. All right, so you can download this stuff. When you download it, you're going to have to put it someplace. If you decide to download fresh versions, do put them in library. Why do I say that? Because if you go back to the bat files, go back to compile.bat, where is it hiding? I say it's not that great. And I go to edit. Now we see what I've done. First of all, set local. This is a Microsoft batch file, okay, .bat file. So it's got they have a command language isn't all that great, but it works. Set local means all the changes I'm making to environment variables only last for the duration of this batch file. Okay. Then I set some variables. I said vcpkg equal to $CD/library vcpk package. What that does, $CD % is the current directory. So when you're running the bat file, it's compile.bat, you're running it in the player directory. And $CD % will expand to, C:\users /kcoka /desktop /GTK /player. All right. And that'll be inserted in front of /library /vcpkg /packages. So vcpkg is the address starting at the top of the disk to the place in the library where the packages are. And it'll echo it out, the result. The percent signs mean don't write the word vcpkg, write the contents of vcpkg. And I do the same thing for VLC. I do the same thing for FFTW. I delete any previous copy of player.exe. And there is the actual compiler. That's the Microsoft compiler. It's CL. Don't ask me where the name came from. But that's what they use. And here's the source code. The source code is player.cpp, resource.c, and then a couple of standard Microsoft libraries, which are part of the SDK or part of the standard system library. I don't know. The up arrow, the caret there, means the line is continued on the next line. And then we have the include files. So \I means that this guy is an include. So it's the GTK 64 Windows include files, the .h files. Likewise for glib, pango, cairo, GDK, ATK, and just a general include file. Then there's the FFTW stuff. So so wherever you put it, it should, if you start the compile.bat from the directory from the top above library, it should correctly connect. Then we have the same thing here for the linkage editor. Okay, and all these are all continuations. Could be one giant long line, but that's not pleasant. So I use the line continuation character. So this is the compile, and up here is the includes, which are running while the compiler is working, and then there's the library paths, which are running when the linkage editor is working. So that's compile. Similarly, sgr.bat, edit that, is the same way. But it's got it links into the binary subdirectories of all these things, and so forth and so on. And at the very end down here, it actually runs it, and it passes to it 2 parameters, because you can have parameters to the program. That thing, the background color, was a parameter. The first thing, %1, would be background color. The second one would be a color, red, green, or £sign stuff. All right. And it starts in a background, and then it starts minimized if you've made it into a launcher like I showed before. So basically, what's the minimum number of things you need to do? You need to get the Microsoft compiler. You need to get the SDK. You need to get something. You're going to need something to run for Linux, not only for Glade but for one other thing. Other than that, everything is pretty much here, and you can run in here. The one thing, of course, I mentioned is Glade. I can't double-click on Glade here. I have to go back to Mint, and I can get out of here because I was just in an editor. And okay, I'm opening it up. Let me eject this disk. Where's the thing? Didn't click it correctly. Where's eject? Oh, there it is. There. It thinks it's got a real disk. It doesn't. It's a virtual disk. Okay, now there's nothing to remove. Of course, it's virtual. Anyway, here I am in the desktop. I go down to GTK. I go down to player, and here's everything. Now, if player.glade, now sometimes when you do this, it gets a little flaky with writing to the files, but don't worry, just ignore it. You go to display. This is the same way as you do it on Linux, and up comes the Glade file, but it's running in Linux. Now, the Glade, this is the thing that makes the Glade XML file. this is how you make it, and it's really a mess because there's so many of these widgets down here, and they're on top of one another, and they're all visible, and it can be really, if I start opening them up here, you'll start seeing stuff all over the place. If I start clicking in places, it's complicated. That's what I'm saying, but it is a really large-scale application here. All these different, I'm opening things here. As you can see, there's an awful lot of widgets going down here. I don't know what half of them are anymore, but anyway, there's a billion of them. But that's the Glade file. So if you want to modify anything, by modify, I mean change its position, change its contents of the buttons, change the way the buttons behave, and so forth, you need Glade. All right. But you can't run Glade native on Windows, so you're going to have to do something about it. And the easiest thing, believe me, is a virtual implementation. So I'm going to kill that. Whoops. I'm killing the top bar here is actually the Windows. This thing is a Windows program, of course. And it's not letting me move it, but this one down here is the actual Glade. It's within it. So that's the Glade. The other one down here, the output, if I can I open it with text editor. What is Glade? It's a giant XML file. I mean, it's like several thousand lines of XML. It's enormous. I have edited it. You don't want to edit it. It's very hard to edit. Be very careful. Make sure these are backup files with funny Windows names. Delete them. Just make sure you don't delete the main Glade file. All right. So you got your Glade. Glade is an XML file. The Glade program generates this XML file. This XML file is then read by your program, and it tells your program where to put all the widgets and how they're supposed to look. The Glade file is not executable. It's definitions. It's one giant XML file. The other thing is resource.xml. Resource.xml here. Let me say open with. I don't want to open. Okay, display. It is kind of XML-ish. It's an XML file, but it gives all the resources that the program will use, one of which is Glade. So what it does is it lists all the things. Many of these I'm actually not using anymore, but I haven't edited them out, but many of them I am, so don't screw with it. These specify files and where they're located, and what it does is it packs them all together into resource.c. And if I go to resource.c and I display it, it's a humongous program with just numbers in it, which are all, I guess that's octal. Looks like octal. I'm still loading it from, I don't know how many lines it is. I really don't want to see it all, but it's huge. And it's the contents of all those files, which have been converted to, again, it looks like octal, because I don't see any numbers over 7. And it starts with a 0. So yeah, it's huge. How many lines is in here, actually? Well, I'm up to 15,000. I'm not at the... Oh, it's still loading. So let's get out of here. We don't really want that. So this resource.xml becomes resource.c. How does it do that? I'm opening a terminal. All right. I'm in Linux. And there's a actual Linux script file here called resources.compile. Let me see if I double click it, it should be display it. It's a very small program. This is it right down here. It's one line down here. The rest is comments. And what it does is it runs glib compile resources, target resource.c. That's the thing to be created. And that's the thing it comes from, resource.xml. This program creates resource.c. Theoretically, you should be able to run it from the WSL1 layer. I haven't found a working version there, but there's one here, I can guarantee you. Resource.script, takes a moment to run. It just ran it, created a new version of resource.c. Now you got, as you remember, in compile.bat, one of the things that gets compiled, not only player.cpp, but resource.c. That is part of your program. And you generate resource.c from resource.xml using that script resource compile. So if you want to change resource.xml, and you might want to, adding some new images or some different icons and so forth, you would modify resource.xml, and then you would recompile it with that script and it would create a new resource.c, and then you compile the whole mess, and you get a new version of the program. So, in other words, you need some way of running some Linux programs in order to create these files. They're not creatable directly in Windows, as far as I know. Like I said, there is a version of Glade. Please don't use it. I don't want to answer questions on, I used the one in Windows and it didn't work. Yes, it doesn't work. Don't use it. So you got to find some way of doing it, and this is the easiest way. Take my word for it. So all things being said, now I'm getting rid of, I've just minimized the Linux, so we're back on the Windows desktop. You end up with something like this, and you end up with, and you have a command prompt where you can compile and run it. I can get rid of this now. And so if I say str run it, get this off the background, and there it is. So if I click on something, well, I click down here, which actually reduces the sound of what I'm about to play. So it minimizes the sound so you can do voiceovers. I have the speakers running, so you're probably hearing an echo. But yeah, and take off the graph lines and go just bars. You can take off the bars and just use lines. You can go to volume charts versus frequency charts. You can go to a different type of meters, fan meters versus more traditional VU meters. You can go to a centralized graph. Most people like that one better. It's actually left on top and right on bottom. But this is actually monaural, even though the colors seem to indicate differently. But yeah, and you can drag and drop stuff, and you can see these things are highlighting as I'm doing it. So this is the application I want to talk about. I suppose I can get rid of the Christmas tree now. This is the application I want to talk about. And I'm hoping I'll explain how it's built, so you'll be able to find things in it. And I'm hoping it can provide an example that you can drag out things into your project. That's usually how I end up writing programs. I find something that's doing something more or less the way I want to, and I adopt it. I copy the code out and move it in someplace else, or I see how it's run and write my own version of it. But yeah, this is all GPL code, so you can copy and paste if you want, with usual restrictions about making sure you credit it. But yeah, it's there's my clock ticking away. That's another graphics application. So hopefully in the next several videos, I'll explain how all of this works, and you'll have great fun. But the first part, and the most difficult part, is getting all the software installed that you're going to need. Like I say, the libraries are already in the distro. If you want fresh copies, there's how to get them. And from time to time, you may need fresh copies. If you want to go and get the pure Linux version, by the way, it's there. It's on my home website, and I can get rid of this, and I get rid of this. It's actually in this virtual. This is the actual Linux version of it. We're actually running in Linux. They look somewhat similar. You can see the meters are different, but a lot of stuff is the same. But yeah, so there's the Linux version, and you saw the Windows version. One final thing, if you're in a virtual machine, please turn it off correctly. I've added these buttons down here. Normally you go to System, and you go to Shutdown, and you say Shutdown. Don't just kill it. It doesn't like that. It's got a file system and stuff, and it doesn't like the plug being pulled. Okay, what does Oracle VirtualBox normally look like? Well, that's what it normally looks like. Oh yeah, how do you share files once you've added the extensions and all that stuff? You got to bring up the you add your Mint Mate. They'll tell you how to do it. If you don't, I'll maybe do a video on it. There's videos out there on how to go to shared folders. And again, you can only share folders once you've got the extensions working. And I've already shared my desktop, you see? You go to the plus sign over here and you say add a new folder, and it'll go through a dialog, and you generally have to click on it and go to other. I don't know why, it's always been that way. And it will add an additional folder which can be accessed by the virtual machine. If you don't trust the virtual machine, put it down some path that's subordinate to everything else. It has nothing beneath it. But it's nothing to worry about. Virtual machines are pretty safe. So yeah, I oddly enough have an old XP version of XP running here because I still got some software that only runs in XP. So there we are. Hopefully I've confused everybody. What was the old, I got this one. It's the movie from the 1930s, 1940s, All About Eve. It's Betty Davis's famous line from it.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Yeah, I hope it's not that bumpy, but anyway.